CNN has learnt that Ugandan presidential candidate Bobiwine's home is under siege. By Brent Swales and Stephanie Bussari from CNN. Ugandan opposition presidential candidate Robert Kyagulanyi, also known as Bobiwine, says his home is under siege from military. The military has jumped over the fence and has now taken control of our home, he said in a tweet on Friday, adding in another that none of these military intruders is talking to us. We are in serious trouble. We are under siege. Earlier journalists traveling to Wine's residence for a press conference were turned back by security forces well before reaching his home. Many reporters were also forced to leave the National Election Tally Center, despite having accreditation. In the morning, Wine said he remained positive despite the widespread fraud and violence experienced across the country during Thursday's presidential elections, which took place under a complete internet shutdown. Bobiwine poses for a photograph after casting his ballot during the presidential election at a polling station in Siege.Here. The challenge now is for the country's electoral commission to declare the will of the people, the hugely popular singer-turned-politician wrote on Twitter as the votes are being counted. Long-standing ruler President Yoweri Museveni, 76, is seeking a sixth term in office. He is being challenged by 10 opposition candidates, including Wine. Museveni said in a CNN interview aired on Tuesday that he would accept the results if he lost. Uganda is not my house. If the people of Uganda don't want me to help them with their issues, I go and deal with my personal issues very happily, he told CNN's Christian Amanpour. Before casting his ballot on Thursday, Wine addressed the media and complained that the majority of his polling agents across the country have been prevented from observing the election by police. Ugandan law guarantees that every candidate is allowed representation at polling locations. Many polling stations were forced to use manual voting and checks after the biometric machines failed to register ballots because of the internet shutdown ordered by the government. There were also reports of late delivery of voting material and insufficient material at numerous polling locations. On Tuesday, 2 days ahead of the polls, internet service providers were ordered to block access to social media platforms. In an address to the nation on the same day, Museveni confirmed that Facebook and other social media were blocked, accusing them of arrogance. Uganda's Electoral Commission has said it will declare the winner within 48 hours after polls closed at 4 p.m. local time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Owen McSweeney contributed to this report. This is an extract from www.cnn.com, article by CNN, translated into audio by J.B. Muwonge, a people power activist. Moving forward, Aljazeera has a developing story about the same. Under siege, Uganda's Bobiwine says. Military raids home. Politician tweets the military has entered his house after he disputed early presidential results. Bobiwine has been arrested multiple times on various charges but never convicted. He says dozens of his party members have also been arrested. Uganda opposition presidential candidate Bobiwine says the military has taken control of his house after it jumped over the fence. Bobiwine tweeted the news just hours after he alleged Thursday's election was rigged, saying every legal option is on the table to challenge the official results. He also referred to himself as the president-elect. Shortly after his tweets were posted, the opposition candidate confirmed to Al Jazeera's Catherine Soy in Kampala that the military had been surrounding and entered his home. Some soldiers jumped into his compound and beat up his guards. Some journalists who are there are also telling us, Al Jazeera, that there is a huge presence of soldiers around his house, she added. Military officials according to Soy said while there was an incident at Wine's residence, but it was not the way Bobiwine was explaining it. Uganda's Electoral Commission says longtime President Yoweri Museveni leads Bobiwine and other candidates in provisional results which Bobiwine described as a joke. It says final results will be announced on Saturday afternoon, while also asking Bobiwine to prove his claims. Wine said he would provide evidence of pre-ticked ballots and other irregularities once internet access in Uganda is restored. We secured a comfortable victory, Wine said. I am very confident that we defeated the dictator by far. He was considering peaceful and non-violent protests over the declared results and said every legal option is on the table. Candidates can challenge election results at the Supreme Court. Internet in the East African country remains inaccessible after the government cut it off on the eve of the elections. On Tuesday, Museveni announced the suspension of social media networks and messaging services including Instagram, Twitter and WhatsApp in response to Facebook closing accounts linked to government officials the technology giant said were spreading misinformation. Bobiwine has been arrested multiple times on various charges but never convicted. He says dozens of his party members have also been arrested. He campaigned while wearing a bulletproof vest, saying the feared for his life. The Guardian, a British daily newspaper, has also learnt about the siege. Bobiwine says soldiers have stormed his home as Uganda counts vote. Opposition leader tweets we are under siege, while President Yoweri Museveni takes early lead in election. Soldiers have stormed the home of Bobiwine, the Ugandan opposition leader has said, as votes continued to be counted in the country's election. We are under siege, the pop star turned politician tweeted. The military has jumped over the fence and has now taken control of our home. President Yoweri Museveni has taken an early lead as votes are counted in Uganda's most keenly watched election in years, while opposition figures said the vote had been marred by fraud and violence. With a third of the votes counted, Museveni had more than 65% of the tallied ballots and was ahead of Wine in almost every region. Wine, one of 10 opposition challengers, had gained about a quarter of the vote, according to Uganda's electoral body. Wine, who has galvanized a mass movement of young people challenging the president's 34-year rule, said at a press conference on Friday morning that Ugandans should reject the results. I am very confident that we defeated the dictator by far, he said. The people of Uganda voted massively for change of leadership from a dictatorship to a democratic government. But Mr. Museveni is trying to paint a picture that he is in the lead. Results are expected to be announced by Saturday. A candidate must win more than 50% to avoid a runoff vote. Helicopters and tanks were on patrol as millions went to the polls on Thursday following one of the most turbulent and violent election campaigns. Wine's rejection of the results could prolong heightened tensions in the East African country. Security forces loyal to Museveni violently suppressed opposition supporters during the campaign. Museveni's bid for a sixth term in power was only made possible when MPs changed the constitution to remove age limits. He has repeatedly accused Wine of being a foreign-backed traitor, while Wine has branded him a dictator. Many in Africa see the challenge to Museveni, who at 76 is twice as old as Wine, as emblematic of a continent-wide generational struggle between aging leaders who refuse to relinquish power and younger voters mobilizing against them. The charismatic Wine has the backing of many young people in Uganda, where the median age is 15.7, who are drawn to his anti-establishment message. Many observers have expressed fears of state-backed moves to prevent transparency during the polls. On Wednesday night, internet access was cut off for most users in the East African country, though some have used VPNs to communicate online. Uganda's Electoral Commission said the lack of internet access had not affected the tallying of the count from around the country. After polls closed on Thursday, hundreds of Wine supporters in Kampala returned to their polling stations to heed his call to protect the vote by watching the count. At the station where Wine had voted, security forces chased his supporters away. Isabella Akateng, a civil society activist, said late on Thursday that she and 29 others who were observing the polls had been arrested at a hotel in Kampala and were being interrogated by police. On Wednesday, the US and EU said they would not observe the elections after several officials were denied accreditation. For more information about this, visit Aljazeera.com. Voice of America, an American international broadcaster funded by the United States Congress, which is the largest and oldest U.S.-funded international broadcaster, has as well learned about the siege. It said, Ugandan military enters opposition. Leader's house after election. Fraud accusations. Ugandan soldiers entered the home of opposition leader Bobiwine on Friday, after he said Thursday's presidential election was marred by widespread fraud. Wine claimed victory and declared himself president-elect, even as early results showed longtime leader Yoweri Museveni ahead 65 to 28%. The military moved in just hours after Wine said he would reject final election results, even before they were in, due to what he called the worst fraud in Uganda's election history. A spokesman for Wine told VOA English to Africa that hundreds of troops have surrounded Wine's house and that the opposition leader is apparently under house arrest. Speaking to the media earlier at his home in Kampala, Wine alleged ballot stuffing, vote rigging, intimidation, and threats against media to prevent them from reporting irregularities. Wine declared himself president-elect over Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power since 1986, despite early results from Uganda's Electoral Commission showing the president with a strong lead over his challenger. I am very confident that we defeated the dictator by far, Wine told reporters. I call upon all Ugandans to reject the blackmail. General Museveni and his small clique of oppressors are trying yet again to impose themselves on the people of Uganda. If authorities had nothing to hide, asked Wine, why did they impose an internet blackout since Wednesday? We do not want to deal with speculation and allegations, Uganda Electoral Commission spokesman Paul Buchanan said, responding to Wine's allegations. We've not declared the final results, and they are already being challenged. So, I think let's continue with what we are doing, and if someone has an issue with them, they can challenge them. Spokesman for Museveni's ruling National Resistance Movement Party Emmanuel Dombo said the president's lead was no surprise. Given our old track record, we are not surprised that people have continued to trust us. But we didn't know we would be this overwhelming. And we are grateful to the population for demonstrating that they still love the old man in the hut. If 76-year-old Museveni is declared the winner over Wine, who is half his age, he would enter a sixth five-year term as president. But it's not necessarily his last. Uganda removed term limits in 2005. Ahead of the election, UN rights officials warned the elections were unlikely to be free and fair due to violence, rights violations, and restrictions on opposition candidates and supporters. The U.S. Embassy in Uganda declined to observe the election after authorities denied more than 75% of their accreditation requests. The Independent, a British newspaper, also wrote about this siege that Ugandan politician Bobiwine has said the military took control of his house on Friday, the day after he stood in the national election against the incumbent President Yoweri Museveni. The 38-year-old is Mr. Museveni's main rival and is particularly popular with the country's youth, leading the regime to target him and his supporters during his presidential campaign. He has been arrested numerous times in recent months and has allegedly survived several assassination attempts. In a tweet posted on Friday afternoon, Mr. Wine said, "We are under siege. The military has jumped over the fence and has now taken control of our home. We are in serious trouble," he added in another message. The singer-turned-politician has claimed that Thursday's election was rigged, adding that every legal option is on the table and referring to himself as president-elect. Although the final results will not be released until Saturday afternoon, Uganda's Electoral Commission said Mr. Museveni, who has ruled the country for 35 years, was leading Mr. Wine by 62% to 29%, with roughly half of all votes counted. Mr. Wine told reporters on Friday that whatever is being declared is a total sham. "I am very confident that we defeated the dictator by far," he added. The violence in the run-up to the election has been widely condemned, with the UN saying earlier this month that it was deeply concerned by the deteriorating human rights situation in Uganda. This view was shared by Josep Borrell, the EU's High Representative, who said, "The excessive use of force by law enforcement and security agencies has seriously tarnished this electoral process." Between 18 and November 20th, more than 50 people were killed when security forces tried to break up opposition rallies. The incumbent president, whose support base is strongest in rural communities, has done too little to hide his strong-arm tactics. In a televised speech on Tuesday, Mr. Museveni told his supporters, "There is no threat we cannot defeat. We have got all sorts of means, simple and complex." Neither the EU nor the US sent officials to observe yesterday's election, after the bloc's previous advice was ignored and US officials were denied visas for the trip. However, those on the ground have noted problems with the election. One member of a leading Ugandan election observer group was even reportedly arrested while meeting a journalist in Kampala. Ahead of the election, Mr. Museveni told internet providers to block all social media use in the country, before the government fully cut the internet on the eve of the vote. On Thursday, Mr. Wine said that the government had blocked his phone to stop him communicating with his election team. Moving forward, Uganda opposition leader Bobiwine says military have taken control of his home. "None of these military intruders is talking to us. We are in serious trouble. We are under siege," Bobiwine tweeted. By the Associated Press. Ugandan opposition presidential candidate Bobiwine said Friday the military had entered and taken control of his home and we are in serious trouble. He tweeted the news just hours after he alleged that Thursday's election was rigged and said every legal option is on the table to challenge the official results, including peaceful protests. He referred to himself as the president-elect. "None of these military intruders is talking to us. We are in serious trouble. We are under siege," wrote Wine, who was arrested several times during campaigning but never charged while dozens of party members were detained. Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, earlier said he feared for his life. The government cut internet access in the East African country on the eve of the largely peaceful election day, and it remains off. Uganda's Electoral Commission said longtime President Yoweri Museveni leads Wine and other candidates based on results from roughly half of polling stations, receiving 62% of ballots while Wine had 29%. It said final results will be declared Saturday afternoon. Earlier in the day, Wine, a popular singer-turned-lawmaker half the president's age, alleged to reporters that whatever is being declared is a total sham. At the time, there was a heavy police presence near his home. The Electoral Commission said the burden is on Wine to prove his allegations. Wine said he would provide evidence of pre-ticked ballots and other irregularities once internet access in Uganda is restored. "We secured a comfortable victory," Wine said. "I am very confident that we defeated the dictator by far." He was considering peaceful and non-violent protests over the declared results and said every legal option is on the table. Candidates can challenge election results at the Supreme Court. The election's generational clash between the young singer-turned-lawmaker Wine and the 76-year-old president is widely watched in many African countries where booming youthful populations express frustration with longtime leaders amid the stresses of high unemployment and the COVID-19 pandemic. Observers have reported problems monitoring the vote, including obtaining accreditation. Charity Ahimbasabu, the team leader at the leading Uganda-based election observer group, said Friday she had been arrested while meeting with a journalist in a hotel in the capital, Kampala. She said she was taken to a police station where she was yet to be informed of the charges. The Electoral Commission asserted that the internet shutdown will have no effect on the process. Meanwhile, Ugandans reported trouble as the internet shutdown disrupted mobile money payments. Elections results were not announced by district, challenging attempts to track the vote. Museveni has led Uganda since 1986 and still has support among some in Uganda for bringing stability. A longtime U.S. security ally, he once criticized African leaders who refused to step aside but has since overseen the removal of term limits and an age limit on the presidency. This article has been translated into audio by J.B. Muwonge from nuknews.com. NBC News Digital is a collection of innovative and powerful news brands that deliver compelling, diverse and visually engaging stories on your platform of choice. NBC News Digital features world-class brands including NBCnews.com, MSNBC.com, Today.com, Nightly News, Meet the Press, Dateline, and the existing apps and digital extensions of these respective properties. For more like this, subscribe to this channel of a people power activist, J.B. Muwonge, for all the updates.